Welcome to Andre's Insight, where clarity meets curiosity. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something that, well, it touches pretty much every single one of us in modern life. It's about finding that sweet spot, that harmony between our work and our personal life.
It's absolutely right. We've gathered quite a stack of sources, articles, research. They look at everything from, say, time management, the impact of technology, all the way through to how this balance or, the lack of it affects us as individuals,
Hmm.
our well-being, our families, and even how the organizations we work for perform.
Yeah, and our mission today really is to unpack all of this, pull out the most important insights, maybe a few surprising facts along the way,
Yeah.
just to help you navigate these challenges yourself. Get well informed without getting totally buried in details.
Exactly.
So let's dive in. When we talk about work-life balance, what does that phrase actually bring to mind for most people?
Traditionally, the sources show it was often about separation. Like, these are my work hours and these are my personal hours. A really clear division. Yeah, like picturing scales, maybe, trying to keep two distinct sides perfectly level. That image is really common, right?
Totally. Trying to divide your time up neatly.
But, some of the sources, they actually challenge that idea. They suggest thinking about it not as some fixed state you either achieve or fail at, but more like a continuous, never-ending process. It requires ongoing vigilance, constantly making little tweaks as life and work shift.
That feels much more realistic, doesn't it? Because life is, well, it's anything but static.
Exactly.
So if strict balance isn't quite the right picture, what's this other concept the sources mention? Work-life integration.
Right, integration. It's a different approach altogether. Instead of trying to build like a rigid wall between work and personal life, the idea is more about blending them.
Blending. Okay. How does that work?
Well, it's about finding a way that allows for more flexibility. It recognizes that, in our connected world, these two areas are often going to intersect anyway.
Right. They bleed into each other sometimes.
Yeah, so the goal isn't separation, it's harmony. Finding ways for them to coexist that feel, fulfilling overall.
Harmony sounds lovely, but I can also almost hear a little alarm bell maybe for some listeners. Like, does integration just mean work gets to seep into every corner of your life?
That's a fair question. And it leads to a really important point raised in the sources. Is the main problem finding this harmony our individual struggle? Like, are we just bad at managing it? Or are the demands placed on us by the workplace itself just fundamentally unrealistic sometimes? Some sources really argue that organizations need to take a hard look in the mirror, examine the expectations they're actually setting.
That's a crucial distinction, isn't it?
Sure.
Because the consequences of getting this right or wrong are pretty huge. They ripple outwards.
Oh, absolutely. The research is really clear. Living a more balanced or integrated life, it isn't just, a nice to have. It's fundamental for maintaining good physical and mental health, for supporting strong relationships, boosting your own productivity, and ultimately improving performance at work too.
And on the flip side, what happens when you don't get it right? It sounds like more than just feeling a bit stressed.
Oh, much more. The sources link poor balance directly to increased stress, yes, but also to burnout, a significant drop in overall well-being, chronic fatigue, sleep problems,
Wow.
anxiety, even depression. It can genuinely erode your relationships and just chip away at your overall life satisfaction.
Quite a list. It really underscores the importance.
And the impact doesn't stop with the individual either. There's some fascinating research in the sources specifically looking at families.
Okay. Like what?
While studies indicate a strong link between, say, a mother's work-life balance and her children's emotional and behavioral outcomes.
Really? How does that work?
It seems that negative stress from work, when it spills over into family life, it can actually increase behavioral issues in kids. Whereas positive spillover, maybe feeling fulfilled by work in a healthy way, can decrease those problems and even foster more pro-social behaviors.
So feeling good about work can actually help your kids.
It seems so. The connection appears to run through things like maternal stress levels and how that affects parenting practices. So, yeah, your personal struggle or harmony can literally shape your child's well-being.
That connection between parent harmony and child outcomes is incredibly powerful. It makes this feel less like a personal productivity thing and more like a fundamental part of healthy living. What about the workplace itself? Does all this employee well-being actually hit the organization's bottom line?
Absolutely. The sources connect this directly. Things like technostress, which we should definitely get into.
Okay.
They aren't just individual burdens. They can actually erode workplace trust.
Trust. How is that linked?
Well, trust is surprisingly linked to overall organizational performance. But here's the really compelling bit. Research shows that supportive workplace practices, things that genuinely promote employee well-being and help them navigate these challenges,
Mm,
they're strongly linked to reduced burnout and higher job satisfaction.
that makes sense.
And get this, companies that consistently show up on those best companies to work for lists,
Yeah.
they are significantly more likely to outperform their market financially.
Oh, kidding. So it's not just good PR.
It seems not. Fostering a supportive environment that enables work-life harmony looks like a genuine competitive advantage. It actually pays to care.
That statistic is definitely something for organizations to chew on. But okay, let's be real. Achieving this harmony, whether you call it balance or integration, it's clearly a challenge for a lot of people.
hmm
What are the biggest roadblocks our sources point to?
Well, one major one, extremely relevant today, is something called technostress.
Technostress. Okay, sounds about right. What exactly is it?
It's pretty much what it sounds like. Stress directly related to our use of and our reliance on technology.
And it's probably more than just having too many emails, right? The sources break it down.
They do. They identify a few key risk factors. First, there's techno overload.
Overload.
Yeah, the sheer weight of constant digital demands, that feeling that technological progress, all the updates, notifications, and the expectation of being constantly available, it's actually reducing our real free time. You feel like you're always on.
Right, that feeling of never quite being able to properly switch off. I think many people feel that. What's the second factor?
That's techno invasion. This is more about the need to constantly learn new tech skills, often under pressure, tight deadlines, and that pushes your personal life aside.
Oh,
It's the sense that technology isn't just a tool anymore, but something that's actively, encroaching on your personal time and space.
like work bleeding over because of the tech itself.
Exactly. One example mentioned is feeling like you have to sacrifice holidays or weekends just to keep up with required software upgrades or learning new platforms your job rolls out.
Oof, yeah. I think a lot of us have felt that specific pinch, that feeling that the future of work sometimes just means more required homework, but on your own time.
hmm
Okay, so overload, invasion was the third one.
Techno uncertainty. This comes from the rapid pace of tech change itself.
How so?
Feeling threatened, maybe, by colleagues who seem more tech savvy, or just the pressure to constantly acquire new knowledge simply to stay relevant.
Like you're always trying to catch up.
Precisely. It creates this constant low-level anxiety about your skills becoming outdated.
Yeah.
And it's fueled by those frequent software updates and network changes we just talked about.
Got it. So technostress is this like multi-headed beast. It's not just being busy with tech, it's the pressure it creates, the way it invades personal time, and that constant feeling of needing to catch up or risk falling behind.
You've got it. And the sources really emphasize that this marginalization of personal life, driven by technostress, is a core problem area. And crucially, it directly erodes workplace trust.
That makes sense. If your employer's tech demands constantly force you to sacrifice personal time, it's hard to feel fully supported or, well, trusted, right?
Exactly. And think about it the other way. If you don't trust the systems or feel supported, your stress levels go up.
Okay, so technostress is huge.
Yeah.
What else? Any other major challenges?
Well, related in a way is the sheer volume of information we face sometimes. It's called infoxication.
Infoxication, like information intoxication.
Pretty much. We're just constantly bombarded with data, alerts, news. So much of it is just noise, low-value stuff that causes distraction and worry.
It feels like trying to drink from a fire hose all day long sometimes.
That's a good analogy. And tied into both of those, the tech and the info overload is just the overwhelming pace of modern life itself.
Yeah, everything feels faster.
It really does. Everything seems to be accelerating, pushing us to do more faster, often with less real downtime. And this relentless pace makes it incredibly difficult to maintain that natural rhythm,
Yeah.
of work, rest, and play. That's actually essential for both sustained productivity and our well-being.
Right. You lose that rhythm. You're drowning in information, battling technostress. It sounds like a direct path to job burnout.
It really is. And the sources list common drivers for burnout, many of which connect right back to these challenges we've discussed. Things like having a lack of control over your work, feeling swept along by the pace or the tech demands, unclear expectations, conflicts at work, having a workload that's either way too heavy or, surprisingly, too light.
Too light can cause stress.
Yeah, feeling underutilized or bored can also be stressful in its own way. And critically, a lack of support from your workplace, feeling alone in it all.
Okay, so we've laid out the challenges, and they're pretty significant. Technostress, infoxication, the pace, burnout. But the good news, I hope, is that the sources also offer ways forward, strategies.
Yes, definitely. Finding this harmony, it isn't something most of us are explicitly taught, is it?
No, not really.
It takes conscious, intentional effort. Things like attentiveness, being honest with yourself, developing skills, and discipline.
It really is a skill set you have to cultivate.
It is. And one powerful analogy I saw in the sources suggests thinking like a trained diver who gets into a difficult situation underwater.
Okay, what do they do?
Their core advice is stop, think, breathe, and act.
Stop, think, breathe, act.
Yeah. It's a deliberate way to pause, regain perspective when you feel overwhelmed, and then take thoughtful action instead of just reacting frantically.
That's a great mental model, a good anchor to have. Okay, let's dig into some specifics then. What are some individual strategies the sources suggest? High-impact things people can actually do.
Well, a key idea is to develop high-impact habits.
High-impact habits, like what?
This means dedicating consistent, focused time, maybe it's 50 minutes, maybe it's a few hours daily, depending on your goals, to your absolute most important tasks or projects. Consistency with these key habits isn't just about getting stuff done. It actually frees up mental bandwidth because you know those critical things are being handled.
Right, it removes that nagging feeling.
Exactly.
Okay.
One source gave an example of someone maintaining a really strict, almost rigid schedule while working full-time and doing a graduate degree, specifically to hit a major career goal. It was about that focused intensity on what mattered most.
So it's not just filling your calendar, but filling it intentionally with what genuinely moves the needle and then really sticking to it.
Mm-hmm.
Another piece of advice I saw popping up was manage your energy, not just your time. What's the thinking there?
Yeah, that's crucial. Time is finite, right? 24 hours in a day. But your energy fluctuates wildly. So
Right.
pay attention to what activities, interactions, or even thoughts drain your energy and try to actively address those energy leaks.
Yeah,
Your capacity isn't just measured in minutes on the clock.
that makes a lot of sense. Manage the fuel, not just the container.
Precisely. And related to that is the strategy to manage what's essential.
Okay, essential.
This means being pretty ruthless, actually, about focusing intensely on making significant progress on a few really important tasks. You could call them your winners, rather than spreading yourself thin trying to make tiny bits of progress on lots of things that might not matter as much in the long run, your losers.
Focus on the winners, ditch the losers.
Kind of. People tend to respect quality results on the key items more than frantic activity on everything.
Okay, that's practical. Doing a few big things well beats doing many small things poorly.
Right.
The sources also had some, well, they call them unconventional tips, like actively eliminating those losers we just mentioned.
Uh-huh.
And also embrace imperfection. That one stood out.
Yeah, trying to make absolutely everything perfect is just a massive energy and time drain, isn't it? The sources suggest that often authenticity and good enough are actually more valuable and appreciated than some unattainable, polished perfection.
Be real, not perfect. I like that. And another really crucial one, especially given the technostress discussion.
Let me guess. Technology boundaries.
Exactly. Go on a digital detox, or at least time block your technology use. Stop being constantly available 204/7. Choose when you engage.
Oh, setting boundaries, especially with technology, is absolutely vital. That constant connectivity is a major, major stressor for so many people.
So unplugging isn't just nice, it's necessary.
It's essential. The sources even suggest practical steps, like using separate devices, maybe a work phone and a personal phone, or different user accounts on your computer for work versus personal stuff. Create those literal boundaries.
Physical separation can help the mental separate.
It really can. And here's a big one that requires a bit of courage. Be willing to test the assumption that everything will absolutely fall apart if you're not instantly available.
Ooh, that's a scary thought for some people.
It is. But the sources suggest that, more often than not, others can actually step up and handle things. Things usually don't implode. But testing that often requires having explicit upfront conversations about your boundaries with your manager, with your peers, making it clear when you are and aren't reachable.
Testing that assumption.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably necessary to actually create the space you need. It won't just appear.
Yeah.
What else helps on an individual level?
Seek support and connect. Don't go it alone.
Talk to people.
Yeah. Talk to colleagues you trust, friends, loved ones. Feeling like you belong, like you have a support system, is a really significant buffer against stress and burnout.
Community matters.
Definitely. And relatedly, actively promote collaboration at work.
How does collaboration help with balance?
Well, it's not just about dividing tasks. Good collaboration sparks ideas, it fuels creativity, it builds trust and camaraderie, all of which can make work feel less isolating and more energizing. It boosts job satisfaction and innovation. Even simple things like suggesting team building activities or just making an effort to get to know your teammates better on a personal level can improve mood and make teamwork smoother.
So connection and community, both inside and outside work, sound like key ingredients.
Very much so.
And finally, for those who might already be feeling the strain, feeling burnt out, how do you actively address burnout once it's started?
Yeah, that's tough. The sources suggest a few avenues. First, communication is key. Try talking to your manager about your concerns. Maybe you can work together to set more realistic goals for yourself or for the team. Realign expectations.
What if that doesn't work or isn't possible?
Well, if a situation feels truly unsustainable or toxic, the sources do mention considering if a different job or work environment might be a better fit. That's obviously a big step, but sometimes necessary.
Right. And on a more personal, immediate level.
Engage in relaxing activities that genuinely work for you. Maybe it's yoga, meditation, deep breathing exercises. Whatever helps you de-stress. Get regular physical exercise that's huge for stress management. And prioritize getting sufficient sleep. Don't underestimate rest.
The basics are important.
Absolutely. And practice mindfulness, just being aware of your physical and emotional state in the present moment without judging it. That awareness is the first step to managing it.
So it sounds like a blend of communication, active self-care, setting realistic goals, and maybe even making bigger changes if needed.
That's a good summary.
It's clearly not just on the individual shoulders, though, right? We touched on this, but what specific role do organizations play in supporting all this?
Oh, organizations play an absolutely critical role. It can't all be on the employee to just cope better. Providing tangible things like family-friendly resources and support structures, that sends a really powerful message that they care about the whole person.
Like policies for parental leave or flexible working options.
Exactly, and the research backs this up strongly. Support from supervisors and coworkers is negatively linked to work-family conflict, meaning when you feel supported by your boss and colleagues, that conflict between work and home life decreases significantly.
So that feeling of support really matters.
It really does. The sources also suggest that workplaces could benefit from consciously reintroducing elements of play or fun.
Play at work. That sounds almost counterintuitive to the always-on, always productive culture we were talking about.
Maybe, but perhaps it's about restoring some of that lost natural rhythm, right? Recognizing that sustained productive work actually needs moments of lightness, rest, and mental decompression. It's not frivolous.
Okay. A bit of fun to break the tension. What about tackling technostress from the company side?
Yeah, that's huge. Clear communication about why new technology is being introduced and how it's meant to help is vital. Providing proper training and opportunities for upskilling is crucial too, so people don't feel constantly behind or uncertain.
So support the transition. Don't just dump new tech on people.
Exactly. They need to integrate new tech effectively so it genuinely enhances collaboration and reduces friction rather than just adding more complexity or demands. And critically, performance evaluation and incentives need to align with the desired outcomes. Meaning, don't roll out a new instant messaging tool that's supposed to improve teamwork during work hours and then implicitly reward or punish people based on how quickly they respond at 10 p.m. The signals have to match.
Right. The culture has to support the tools and policies. Don't say one thing and measure another.
Precisely. It sounds like organizations really need to be thoughtful and intentional about the entire environment they create, especially around technology, workload, and expectations.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the sources suggest creating a genuinely healthy work environment where employees feel heard, feel acknowledged, understand how their contribution fits into the bigger picture. That is fundamental, not just for individual well-being, but for the organization's long-term success and performance. It circles right back to that stat about the best companies outperforming.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, wow, there's a lot here. Whether you prefer thinking about it as balance or integration, it's really clear that finding some kind of harmony between your professional and personal life isn't a one-time fix, is it?
Not at all. It's a dynamic, ongoing process. And its impact, as we've seen, reaches far beyond just your own desk or your own stress levels. It affects your health, your family, and even how well your workplace performs.
Yeah, we've seen how powerful forces like technostress, that infoxication, and just the relentless pace of modern life can make this journey feel really challenging sometimes.
But the sources also give us like a roadmap, don't they? They show that individual strategies, things like setting firm boundaries, managing our energy instead of just our time, focusing on what's truly essential, actively seeking support, can make a real tangible difference.
And importantly, that organizations have a massive role to play too, by fostering genuinely supportive environments and being mindful, really mindful of the demands they place on their people.
Absolutely. It's a two-way street.
It really shifts the perspective, doesn't it? Away from just like carving out equal blocks of time on a calendar towards managing your most precious resource, your energy, focusing your efforts strategically, and just recognizing that your well-being is completely intertwined with your productivity and your happiness, both inside and outside of work.
Yeah, perhaps the biggest takeaway, for me anyway, is that this isn't about achieving some perfect static state of balance that you can finally check off a list.
Right. It's not a destination.
No, it's more like a continuous self-aware dance. Always learning, always adjusting to the changing rhythms of your own life and work.
A continuous journey of self-awareness and adaptation. I like that. So thinking about everything we've talked through today, the challenges like technostress and overload, the strategies like boundaries or managing energy, the impacts on families and workplaces, what one aspect of finding this harmony resonates most strongly with you, the listener, right now? And maybe more importantly, what's one small conscious step you could take, maybe today or this week, to move just a little bit closer towards that state of harmony in your own life?